Welcome. We will discuss differentiating assessments into 4 different types. This is a macro view of assessment, a first step in crafting an authentic, research-guided approach to assessing your students' learning. Assessments fall into 2 broad categories. Within these categories there are further subcategories, but all assessments are either formative or summative. Formative assessments have a primary goal of improving the depth and quality of student learning, not to provide final evidence of learning or yielding grades. You use these assessments to inform your teaching and to provide feedback to students. Students will use these assessments to inform their own view of their mastery and understanding of the subject matter. Some examples of formative assessments for the virtual classroom are pre-tests of foundational knowledge, muddiest point discussion forums, draft submissions of project sections, peer review, and self-check quizzes. Dylan Williams, a leading researcher in the field of assessment, describes formative assessment like this. Formative assessment describes all those processes by which teachers and learners use information about student achievement to make adjustments to students' learning to improve their achievement. Summative assessments are a little different. They're about making judgments. A summative assessment really has a primary goal of providing proof of learning and assigning a grade or defining the level of knowledge a student has attained. You will use these types of assessments to decide if the student has achieved mastery of the course material or has failed to do so. Students will use these assessments to judge whether they are capable of continuing in the field of study or making similar high-level decisions. These assessments do not generally offer opportunities for revision or improvement. Some examples of summative assessments for online learning are research papers, quizzes, exams, and problem sets. To get a further perspective on the difference between summative and formative assessments, please watch the video interviews with Dylan Williams and Rick Wormelli. A second way to differentiate assessment types is by relative value vis-a-vis their effect on students' ultimate assessment, their grade. What are high-stakes assessments? High-stakes assessments are defined by value more than type. They have 6 major characteristics. First, they are given infrequently. They are single, defined assessments. They have obvious, significant consequences for both success and failure. They have high relative value compared to the student's final grade. They're summative in nature, and feedback, if given, is not timely. For example, if you assess your students with a midterm and a final exam that together yield more than 50% of a student's final grade, even if students complete other forms of assessment, you are using a high-stakes assessment strategy because failure on these assessments will almost certainly result in failure of the course. High-stakes assessments are in the news a lot. Standardized tests like the SAT, Virginia's Standards of Learning, and the New York Regents exam are high-stakes assessment that can have profound negative effects on students' lives. These exams have spawned a nationwide $4 billion test preparation industry, founded on students and their parents' fear of failure on these exams. This is important because fear is a primary motivator for students required to take high-stakes assessment. They will do whatever they need to do to succeed because there is so much at stake. This includes spending $200 an hour on test prep classes, cheating, plagiarism, and cramming. These things get them through the exam successfully, but may not yield a student who actually knows what the test claims to prove they know. An interesting fact is that engineering students are the second most likely group of students, business students, not a shock, are number 1, to engage in cheating, primarily because of the discipline's reliance on traditional high-stakes assessments in combination with the difficulty of the material. If you have doubt about the prevalence of cheating in higher education, please read the article, The Shadow Scholar, published in Chronicle of Higher Education. High-stakes assessment commonly used in higher education, like finals, midterms, term papers, theses, and dissertations, are not surprisingly the source of many academic integrity problems. High-stakes assessments are also more likely to result in the practice of curving grades, either on the exams themselves or on students' final grades. In an applied, competency-based program like EP, this is a seriously negative practice because a student who has earned a D has not achieved mastery, even if that D is changed to a B because the student did better than the average student. Grading curves also foster a competitive learning environment as opposed to a collaborative one. Now let's take a look at low-stakes assessment. Like the high-stakes assessments mentioned above, low-stakes assessments are defined by their relative value in relation to the student's final grade. They also have certain recognizable characteristics. They are given frequently. They individually have a low impact on a student's final grade. They are formative in nature, and feedback is timely, That is, a student gets feedback on their assessment in time to improve their learning and improve their grade in the course. As championed by Dr. Scott Warnock of Drexel University, frequent low-stakes assessments are all about feedback. By giving more frequent assessments, you dilute the impact of any one grade, good or bad, and reward consistent quality efforts. I think that's an important point to make. While high-stakes testing, quote, discouraged teachers from using strategies which promoted inquiry and active student learning, unquote, FLS methods, frequent low-stakes methods, do the opposite. FLS methods foster transparency in grading and a collaborative academic atmosphere. Thank you for watching this video.